Welcome to Wisdom Talk Radio, a collaborative community of explorers in conscious living. Welcome to today's episode of Wisdom Talk Radio. This is where we explore the depths of conscious living and what it truly means to live an expanded life. Join us to be inspired and encouraged, transformed, and to experience a deep sense, a real sense of joy and what's possible. So, pleasure. For a moment, just feel that word. Even breathe it in. Pleasure. Do you sigh with longing? Does your heart leap with anticipation and recognition? Or do you dismiss pleasure as something that is frivolous and just simply unimportant? When you connect purpose with pleasure, the whole conversation shifts. It deepens. So stay tuned for this conversation, this special conversation today. I'm Laurie, Seymour, host of Wisdom Talk Radio and CEO and founder of the Baca Institute, home of the Quantum Connection process. You can head over to the Baca Institute to discover your unique connection with the essence of who you are by taking the Quantum Connection quiz. Why quantum connection? People ask me that all the time. Because we're each designed to directly connect with Source differently. And knowing what your own unique style is opens a deeper connection with the universe. It's the secret to creating what you truly want in your life. Because who you are is exactly who is needed. So my guest today is Jenny Glick. Sorry, Jenny. And we had an opportunity, several weeks back to have a conversation. And both of us ended the conversation with this feeling of, this is really juicy. And this is somebody that I want to know. And so what better way for me to get to know somebody than to have her as a guest on Wisdom Talk Radio. Jenny is a retired marriage, family, sex therapist, writer, torchbearer, and change catalyst for well-nourished women. With over 25 years guiding women to unlock rich, resonant lives without all the fluff-you-up-coachy-empowerment-stuff. I love that. Jenny helps you experience fulfilling partnerships, align with the compass and map of your own being, and come alive with purpose and pleasure through the radical act of living in alignment with the truth of who you are. Welcome, Jenny. We are both committed to living the truth of who we are, and we want that for those of us who we are with in our lives.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Laurie. It's such a pleasure to be here. And it was so fun to listen to you talking more about your work and the direct connection with Source, which for me, part of how it is that we enter that direct connection is by what feels good, right? By pleasure. And we'll get more into this, but how pleasure has this real particular perspective that it's about sex, right? Which it can be, but pleasure is so much more than that.
Yes. Yeah, and pleasure encompasses so much more than that. So maybe that is where we begin is for you to speak about pleasure, but about your own journey with how that has expanded and opened up and what that means then.
Yeah, thank you. Well, I think that, I started out as that very type A woman in my early 20s and have 12 letters behind my name, collected lots of degrees and certifications, and was very successful by standard measures in the world. And my life was pretty devoid of pleasure. Pleasure mostly came through productivity, by checking off my to-do list, by getting those atta girls once I started my own business about 18 years ago. It became about my numbers and growing my business and hiring more and more expensive coaches and doing all of these things from a place of productivity that I would say, and anyone who knew me, I mean, I was happy, I had a good life, but pleasure? No, I wouldn't say. It was more that I was unconsciously running my life through a lens of anxiety, through a practice in my body of, oh, I need to get up and go to spin class, and I need to get, check my numbers and do my mindset work and sit and be a good girl and do my meditation and go to the weekend yoga retreat. So it was a lot of sort of this cookie monster gobbling up all the things that I needed to do in order to be the successful woman, right? And I was and am in a different way, but my measure back then had nothing to do with what felt good, because the thing that felt good was me trying to secure a sense of safety through money or accolades or doing the thing that I was supposed to be doing next, going for the next certification, being the favorite by the next teacher, whatever it might be. So again, although there was nothing wrong with that, it helped me get to where I am today in terms of having a felt experience that felt juicy and delicious and open and relaxed and rejuvenative and nourished. No, none of that was happening. And if it happened in very short little blips, like taking a vitamin, for a moment, but it wasn't the through line of my life. And so it wasn't until about 5 years ago when we sold everything and moved to Mexico as a family. I left my business in Denver, sold my counseling center. We bought a house in Mexico and lived on the beach and sort of had it all, in quotes. And I was bitter and tired and resentful. Although my bank account looked nice, it didn't feel good in my body. And that was a big wake-up call for me to come back to, okay, what is wealth for me? What matters for me? And then the path of what feels good. And then the path of how do I occupy my body more and more as a woman who has a master's degree in women's studies, who has a master's degree in, therapy, is certified in sex therapy, all kinds of things. But I hadn't really located myself in my body and then allowed my body's wisdom to start guiding me and to listen to that. And so that started about 5 years ago in a very concerted way where I just stopped doing everything else and just really started focusing on what felt good. And, part of that was reclaiming the word pleasure, because before that, when I would see things on social media by different like sex coaches or pleasure priestesses that talked about pleasure, I was like, oh, must be nice, must be nice that you can just sit around in your, like silk robes and talk about pleasure with your, man toy that you have or something. I really poo-pooed what felt good. And so I needed to come into relationship to what feels good for me, and what is underneath pleasure, which we'll get to as we have this conversation, is safety. Because if we're not safe, we can't experience pleasure. And for all of those years, I never felt safe. I was trying to locate safety through accomplishments, through buying the next house, through getting a nicer car, through whatever the external measures were, because internally, I did not feel safe.
Okay, can I shift that or expand that for a moment? And I don't even know that this is something you'd speak to, but it's so important to me because it's everything that I'm writing about in my next book. And that's about feeling loved, knowing that you are loved, knowing that you are intimately and completely connected with the universe.
Yes.
So can you build me personally a bridge with what you're talking about between safety underneath pleasure and feeling loved?
Yeah, I feel like they're two sides of the same coin,
Hmm.
right? Because I think so many, especially so many women who I work with, would not identify that they don't feel loved because they would say, like I would have said,
Hmm.
like, I love myself, like, I'm amazing. Look at my life, right? Like, I love who I am. I get a massage every week, or I, take myself on a girls' weekend, periodically,
Right.
whatever the thing is. And so I think because that word loved
Hmm.
has been so co-opted in so many different ways
Hmm.
that when I recognized that the part of me that pulls me in what I call my front body. So your front body's like, I need to get that email. I need to look at my number. So it's that part of you that propels you forward, right? When my front body is running the show and there's a whole lot of I need to do this, I need to do this, I need to do this,
Hmm. Hmm.
which feels very different than when, and I teach my clients and students to live in your back body. And when I'm in my back body, it's like orienting. And if you're listening to this right now, you can orient to the back of your skull, the back of your neck, the back of your spine, the back of your sits bones, and feel gravity and the anchor behind and underneath you. And from that place, being fueled to your purpose. Oh, there are emails that need to be checked. I will do that. So there's this presence that comes when we're
Hmm.
fueled by something that is grounded and rooted. And so for me, I needed to really recognize where it was that I was not safe in my body. And when I recognized that, I realized I was not practicing love, because love is not just band-aiding it with some self-care, right? The practice of maintaining safety inside of me is really being deliberate and discerning about what I think, what I feel, what I do, how I
Hmm.
behave. And then all of that grows into love, because I'm tending to, just like you would tend to a baby,
Hmm.
you tend to all aspects of that child's care, right? Especially when they're small. And that is the act of love. And so for me, when I focus on safety, that's the practice of love. And then I get to feel that love inside of me.
Hmm. Hmm. So interesting. I mean, it's just a really different way of thinking about it. I love the back of your body because I can automatically or immediately feel that sense of what changes from when I'm pushed or pulled forward from the front of me to do whatever I think I'm supposed to do to finish my to-do list. But that
Yes.
sense of really rooting in oneself and coming home to oneself.
Hmm.
There's that sense of, oh, this is who I am. This is the truth of who I am.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
coming from that place, it changes the whole game.
It changes the whole game. And then whatever it is that we're touching is infused with love,
Hmm.
because it's infused with the presence of this moment
Hmm.
rather than the program that was running me
Hmm.
for so long. Even though I was conscious, I've had a meditation practice for 30 years. I've been, had participated in 3 different mystery schools. I've done all kinds of those things.
Right.
And underneath it, I was trying to achieve something so I could get safe.
Yeah.
That was at the end of the day. I was not showing up as a whole woman, as a
Mm.
loving, grounded human being, and then allowing myself to unfold in that moment of meditation or whatever was happening. I was grabbing at the meditation in order to help me feel grounded so that
Yep.
I could feel better, so I could check it off my list, so then I could go to work and I could be the best, therapist that I could be. And so
Right.
I did everything and then come home and have a glass of wine and go to bed and do it again.
I'm exhausted. I'm
I
exhausted
know.
listening. And I know I'm so familiar with all that from my own insides and from so many people that I've worked with through the years, because that feeling of being driven to accomplish something. There's no way to feel into the unknown. There's no way to be able to step into something that is unknown, because to speak to your point about safety, if I don't feel safe enough in my own body, I don't feel safe enough to step into the unknown.
Exactly. And only in the unknown will anything new, this,
Hmm.
anything new and fresh and alive be available to us. And if I don't feel safe because of all the programming, both past and current day, right? Like you just need 10 minutes on any media, social media channel or talking to a neighbor.
Right.
And the fear and the scarcity and the lack consciousness, that those energy fields are so available to us that it really invites us to so much mastery, not perfection, not being hard on ourselves, but tremendous awareness so that we can own all of our power and divinity that we are on this earth.
So when you have someone come to you in this place of saying, I want more, how do you help them begin in this process really of coming into alignment with their own truth?
So we start by simply inviting the woman to come into more attunement with herself, to start listening, right? Again, for many people who I work with, myself included, I have logged so many hours on a therapist's couch or with a coach or a mentor and a guide, right? And so I know I got to a place a few years ago where I didn't even know what was the truth in me because I was hearing everybody else's voice of what I should do and people who I admired and respect. But is that my truth? I don't even know anymore what my goal is because people tell me you could really do X, Y, or Z. And then I take that on and I start working towards that accomplishment. And then it's like, wait a minute, is that really mine? Or is that something that I'm trying to prove to someone else? And so the path begins with coming into relationship with really tuning in to who she is from the moment she wakes up in the morning and what happens that first fresh moment in bed. Where does the mind go? You know, the 4 things I teach about a lot is your thinking, feeling, doing, and believing, and all of that creates your energetic signature. And you take that throughout the world. And so this is the practical part of the energy work. I didn't ever realize I was an energy worker as a trained therapist, right? I was just doing therapy with people.
I understand, having been a trained therapist, yes.
Yes, like I didn't realize like, oh, I don't actually want to keep sitting here talking with you about your trauma because the more we do that, the more we're going to park you right back into that reality.
Right.
Not that there's not a time or place for that for some people, but after many, many years, at some point we get to cross the threshold, and how it is that we cross the threshold, right? Between two worlds, there's an initiation. And so a lot of women come to me because they're at that place of, I'm ready to self-initiate. I don't initiate them. You know, I'm not a minister or a rabbi. It's not my job to initiate them. They get to self-initiate and we're shoulder to shoulder. And I'm there mirroring to them, okay, let's look at how it is that you're organizing the structure, the architecture of who you are from that first moment when you wake up in the morning, right? And then really feeling what's that energetic signature that you're bringing. Because if you feel rattled or anxious, which many people do, I certainly did. I was running from anxiety, right? And caffeine. That is not a signature of safety. And so how do we get safe, right? And so we start there in very simple terms and inviting her to start to listen deeply to the things that she does know for sure. And in my experience, when I talk to women, they will say things such as, well, I really can't stand my job. I've been doing it for a long time. I have this idea to do something else, but I'm really afraid to do that. And I want to be able to be more frank or candid with my partner because I really want to tell him or her A, B, and C, but I just don't know. And I'm like, hold on, you just told me exactly what you know. You do know because you just said it. And so I bring them into a state of awareness where they can notice that we say our truths all the time, but then we go and shake the Etch-a-Sketch by saying, but I just don't know. So notice, your listeners can notice how often you or the people around you, women, because men don't do this. Women say, but I don't know, after they just named their knowing. And so how is it that we can come into more alignment with what we do know? Because there are things that we're afraid to know.
So I was
right?
just, it's been interesting because you just called it out about men don't do this. And I was just going to say, so I work with men and women and always have. And I think there are it's different. And I think there are some crossovers
Yeah.
in what you're speaking to.
Yes.
Men might, well, I actually know a number of men who would also be able to say, that scares me. I don't really, Then there's the other men that will step in and say, well, no matter what it is, I know. And so but for both, it's that turning inwards to be able to listen more closely to what is emerging, what is being made known to you, even if it's only in that small, quiet voice.
And in that initiatory place, right? Which is what you do and I do as well, is where we can step into a container where someone else can hold all that we know. Because I was going to say sometimes, but I actually think often, our knowing, we have different kinds of knowing, right? There is a knowing that I need to leave this job, and there's another knowing that I need the paycheck. And both of those knowings are true, right? And so having the sobriety of maturity to be with all of it and to not need to rush to the end, right? But if I'm running through anxiety or I'm not safe, then we will, hear ourselves saying, but I just need to make a decision. Right. And it's because we don't have the practice of being in the unknown. And so partnering with a way shower like yourself or me, or there's so many who can stand with you during that, what feels like purgatory, right, between worlds.
And, I often speak about the void, because the void is that space between when something ends. Let's say you've left the job, but you're not quite sure how you're going to move now. That's that space where for me, I wake up and I want to cry, not because I'm sad, not because I'm upset about anything. There's not even sadness. It's that empty space, or what feels like empty space, until something starts to move and pieces come in. But I also see so many people who want to fill that empty space with what they think they know or what they think they're supposed to do. And it's really, it's that moment of choice to be willing to, okay, let me be here in this space where I don't know.
Yes. Yes. And the sobriety and the maturity to know that in the void, and I love the term void. For me, I put the word fertile before it, because then it reminds me that something's coming that I don't see.
Absolutely.
And because I don't see it and I don't know what it is, and it's something new that's being birthed, it's my job to steward the birthing with nutrients, with a midwife, with space, movement, whatever it is, to really provide nutrient-rich provision for whatever is going to come next. And I think because we live in part in a culture that really doesn't have a relationship with the unknown, with the fertile void, that we need to know. And if you don't know, you're failing, then fear gets shoehorned in that space. And then we want to push it out before it's time.
Yeah. Feel fear or something's wrong.
Yeah.
We're also not taught how to value that fertile void, and that it's truly necessary, and it's a good thing. Not, oh, maybe I'm coming down with something, maybe I'm getting sick, or
Right. Maybe the creative juices have totally dried up, and I've done that as well. And, now, knock wood, I think I'm getting to the place where I'm able, remind me, Laurie, if I forget, if I reach out to you and say, that when I have those periods, which happens for me like 3 times a year, I can see a period where I am more contracted, right? I'm going within. I have less that I'm offering externally. And I'm finally at almost 51. I'm finally honoring that those are these natural rhythms of contracting and expanding. And I've known this for 20 years. I've known about polarity. I've known it all. but to know it, and then there's the difference in really embodying it,
Yes.
right? Really being in that fertile void, that emptiness, and surrendering and saying, you know what? I'm safe. I'm safe. I
Mm.
love myself in here. So, what is mine to do in this moment? So, it might be read or journal or take a walk or be in nature or whatever it might be to nourish myself, just like a pregnant woman. What do I need to do right
Right.
now? Right? Put my feet up, right? And trusting that something's going to come rather than gripping and clenching, which is what I used to do, grip
Mhm.
and clench and oh my gosh, and look at my client list or look at what I need to be doing. And that creativity does not produce, right?
No,
That is not.
that's not a creative place. Because for me, the creative place is when we're really are aligning with source. We're really aligning with what is vibrating at a frequency that we haven't yet quite brought into our bodies. So for me, I step into that fertile void very frequently. And I say step into it sounds like I'm doing it like, oh, okay, today I'm going to get to, but I wake up. Perhaps it's because I've finished creating something. Perhaps it's like a week and a half ago, I finished teaching a class at the end of the weekend, and I was initiating because I do initiate energetically with people for in a certain way. And then it was like, okay, I'm in my seminar now. I'm in the I don't know who I am, and then having to pay attention and to give it space and start to decode what that new frequency is, what it feels like in the body.
That's beautiful. I can really feel that, the decoding, right? That the process of being in relationship with the codes
Yeah.
that you're given, like really be in that relationship, which invites, again, for me, these themes that we're talking about: safety,
Mhm.
love, self love. I talk a lot about self devotion in my work, and
Mm.
that self devotion practice of being available for those codes, though I don't normally use the word codes, but it's the same thing, right?
Yeah.
We're having those transmissions or downloads or knowings that are
Hmm.
coming out from us, and to create a life where we honor that, and
Hmm.
then we celebrate what happens on the backside when we follow, after we go through
Right.
the fertile void.
Hmm.
For me, I would go through the void. I say that in quotes because it was mostly hiking a mountain, getting to the top, and giving myself 2.5 minutes and then saying, what's the next goal? Right. So, again, no
Time to go down.
pleasure,
Yeah.
right? No pleasure at all in
Mm.
really relishing in, I climbed that mountain,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
letting that in a felt sense in my body, in my cells,
Right.
feel what it feels like, not thinking. Most people think their feelings. We don't feel or sense our feelings in our
Hmm.
body, which can make it really difficult to know our knowing if I'm not in my body, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I want to bring in relationships, marriage, relationships really in any form, because part of decoding for me is the most generic sense of decoding. Like, this is what's happened. Now, how do I understand it? How do I get to know it? Because having an energetic experience of change doesn't mean you know what the heck any of it's about. And then life I talk to people about looking at your life, seeing how you're thinking differently, seeing how people are responding to you differently, what's showing up now that wasn't before. And I know you work a lot. You have a program called Marriage is Your Ashram. I love that. um, how do you think about that? How do you see that happening?
Mhm. Well, I created this program, the Your Marriage is Your Ashram, in 2018 after I had been working with couples for about 12, 15 years. And in my practice, that was most recently in Denver, Colorado,
Where I
what,
live.
right where you live in your stomping grounds, most often women would call me and say, we're having problems in our marriage, communication, and I just want to bring my husband in so that we can learn some skills, and I know I have my part of it, but he isn't doing his work, right?
Right. Right.
And so that was maybe 75, 80% of the clients who I saw then. And what would ensue was two people coming in, one who wanted to be there, who often wanted me to tell her spouse how he wasn't doing what he should be doing. And then the husband, some level of begrudgingly showing up because he's being a bad boy in marriage, to the principal who's going to, make him wrong or bad. And obviously, I mean, I'm a great therapist. I don't make anybody wrong or bad. I was well liked and loved by my clients, but just that starting point culturally,
Right.
I started to see this is problematic, right? Like just the entry point of that. And so, and then when we're in couples therapy itself, there's so much of this tug of war happening. Well, I did the homework, but he didn't. Well, she said this to me and you told her not to. It was, I just saw, and again, not with everybody, but with a large enough chunk that I started to say, what are we missing here?
Yeah.
Right. And so I created this program because I decided I'm only going to work with women. And I'm going to work with women who otherwise would be going to couples counseling. And I will show them how it is that when you change your thinking, feeling, believing, doing, your energetic signature, your relationships will change. And I don't know that you will stay married. I don't know what will happen. What I do know is you will become responsible for yourself and you'll stop abdicating to your partner. You'll stop being a victim to the marriage. You'll stop harboring resentment, bitterness, and blame of yourself and of your partner. And so it worked. And, it worked then, it works now. And I've had hundreds of women go through the program. I've never met their husbands, and their marriages have changed. Most of them stay married, and most of them are very happy in their relationship, and they never even realized how much unconscious noise they were bringing because their attention and intention was on someone else, right? And so really shifting that. And I created I work so well in marriage because I was not an easy person to be married to for a very long time. My husband and I are going on 26 years, happier than we've ever been. But the first 15, Laurie, I was a pill, like I was bitter and angry and measuring him on this yardstick of
Just
enoughness.
like you were measuring yourself.
Which is exactly what I was doing here, right? And so we went to all kinds of couples therapy. And since I'm in the field, we went to some of the best people, people who have written New York Times bestseller books. And all of them had a similar perspective, which was let's fix the marriage, right? And nobody looked at what am I bringing to it? What if I was 100% accountable?
Yeah.
That's it. What if just I was 100% accountable?
Without caring whether or being attached to your husband's being accountable. And that's the key piece. We think, well, why is it all my fault? Why am I the one that has to do the work?
Yes. And that's what women say, who I love. I love women. But when we say, and I said it too, why do I have to do all the work? I was like, I don't know. Why is it that you're so powerful? Right? How come I have to be that powerful?
Yeah.
Well, because that's your divine right from my perspective. And you can abdicate that responsibility and you're still being powerful. That's the thing. You can say, well, I don't want to do the work because he's not great. Then that power is being funneled in you not quote unquote doing the work, which is creating something too. You're always creating. So do you want to really create coherence around what you're creating? And I say this again with so much love and compassion because I walked through it and I was gnashing my teeth when I really started getting sober to my addiction to resentment with my husband. It was not pretty. It was hard. So I have tremendous compassion for women who are willing to do this work, and men too. I've had actually about a dozen men go through my online course, which I love. And then they email me, are like, I did it. It was great. I'm like, that's awesome.
I'm glad. I want our listeners, our viewers to be able to relate, whether they're a man or a woman. And know that there's something here for them too.
Absolutely, because it's true. I mean, the truth is, I could create the program the same for men, right? Like it goes. That said, however,
Mm-hmm.
that women, we do hold this sort of emotional part of our relationships, our committed relationships, in a real unique way. I do believe that men and women bring different skills and gifts to a relationship. And the same, I've had many women who are in relationships with other women come through my program, because we're all playing with polarity. We all have feminine and masculine polarity in us, and that dance is happening in us, and then it's also happening with our beloved man, woman, whomever it might be.
Right.
And so becoming
That's our
aware.
mirror.
Yes, always,
So
always.
you talk about this. This is a question that you had sent to me, and I really appreciate it on so many levels. And it's about how life is our mystery school. And I can say from my perspective, I think about life being our mirror. So as life is your mystery school, if we see our life in that way, what changes? What happens? What are we moved into?
Well, I think we become again sober to our addiction to being a victim, right? When we see that all of this is mirroring something in me. I read something not long ago that said you can only be a victim once. After that, you're a volunteer, right? Which it sort of tickled me that, like, yeah, that's true. That at some point we get to see, regardless of what our path has been, it has just been what it is, right? It is what it is. And so, how do I, as I talk about being a well-initiated man or woman in your life. When we're well-initiated, I take what has happened in my life as the mystery school that I'm here to be in relationship with. And so then I can bring forward with discernment and wisdom those experiences, which is very different than seeing life just as stuff that's happening, that I'm a victim to the political system, the environment, my neighbors, the community, my family, whatever it might be, then I'm left really reacting. But when I can see the mystery schoolness of it, so anything that happens is an opportunity to mirror something in me. I've worked with many, many people who say, well, when I'm single, it's just so easy. Well, yeah, because
Right.
you're not living with the house of mirrors. That's why it's
Exactly.
easy. You don't have to look at yourself ever that you leave dirty dishes or that you cut someone off when they're speaking. And so as soon as we come into relationship with an intimate partner, children, parents, a neighbor, work, clients, anything, right? We start to see ourselves. And so that's the mystery school path. And that's what's exciting to me about working with people in this way, rather than in the pathologizing way that I was taught, as a clinician, where we're trying to fix something. And from my perspective, no, we're not broken. We're just shifting the kaleidoscope to see and integrate parts of ourselves every single day, which makes every day very exciting.
It is, and that's the path of consciousness. That's the being conscious. It's like, oh, being curious. What's here for me to understand? What's here for me to discover? And that is such a different place than what's here for me to fix, or oh boy, I've got so much work to do. No, we all have work to do, and that work is in the service of being more and more and more conscious.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. And again, in those two different pathways that you spoke about, for me, when I recognized the one pathway that was about me fixing myself, I was broken, I wasn't safe. I simply was not safe. There was something wrong with me, and I needed to fix it and gobble up all the training. And so for me, really recognizing that piece, please, I see you have a thought. Go ahead.
Yeah, yeah. Well, no, that's such an interesting. There's like this subtle and not so subtle kind of shift that happens in there around safety. Because I don't generally speak about safety very much, so I'm really listening with a few sets of ears, shall we say? And so if I think I'm broken, or if I treat myself as if there's something wrong, then of course I'm not safe, because I'm always trying to figure out who's got the right answer. How can I fix me? How can I protect myself from being seen as needing to be fixed? How can I keep myself from being punished? I mean, all those things play into that. So if I've shifted out of that and see, oh, there's so much more to discover, there's so much more to be revealed. And maybe that's why, and that's been such a long-standing now life stance, if you will, that I don't feel much in the way of lack of safety. I might going into a networking event and there's that moment of,
Sure.
and then I can take a deep breath and like, oh, yeah, I'm going to be me. That's the
Yes.
only me I've got.
Yeah, the safety conversation for me it's very compelling because I think about love as a verb. And because I worked with children for the first 10 years of my clinical practice, and I knew that I could work with a child whose parent said, I love them, but they were not keeping them safe with their words, their actions. And so that child was what we call dysregulated, right?
Right.
Because that child was hypervigilant,
Which said they weren't being
oversensitive,
loved.
right? All those things, because love was just something that was said.
Right.
And safety, when we feel deeply safe, right? That child can create and explore and is not trying to prove. And nobody needs to say, I love you, because the child knows it in their body,
Yeah. So
right?
it's almost like we're using the words, I want to say synonymously, even if that's not quite it, because I could substitute when a child feels loved, it's not because they've been told they're loved.
Yes.
I was told I was loved in a lot of different ways. But when my father passed and I was 6 years old, and he was the one I knew that experience from in my body, I no longer felt safe. I no longer felt loved.
Yes.
And so that meant that there was something wrong with me, because I looked around, it looked like everybody else was doing okay.
Yes.
So
Yeah, absolutely.
they
They're
pivot on
very,
each
very
other.
connected, those two terms. And again, and I think that for your listeners, it's useful to feel which term activates me, right? Is uncomfortable for me. What do I want to push away? What's easier for me
Beautiful.
to lean into? Because there are so many doorways for us to be in this mystery school, right? And to play into what will unlock something afresh for us.
Yeah. So thank you. Thank you for playing with that with me. And I know we've gone far afield in a way, and I want to give you a couple minutes. We were just talking before we started about how we, perhaps I'll say it this way, create bridges between what we can call energy work and how does that relate to real life? And how do we bring that together? And you're going to be starting a new program in the new year too. Well, it may be after this comes out, but I suspect that the nature of this will be worth speaking into.
Yes, yes. So, what has always been compelling to me, Laurie, in this work as a spiritual initiate for 30 plus years in my life and a clinician, right, in these parallel worlds, was how it is that we bridge the two. Because I spent so much time with very spiritual gurus, teachers, and then sort of behind the curtain, how they were showing up was not in alignment in the actual, chop wood, carry water of being in an ashram kind of situation or a teaching situation with them. And so for me, I've always been so compelled by how do we bring these spiritual teachings that seem very esoteric in with the very mundane practice of raising children, being married, having health issues, having in-laws, community stuff, political stuff, whatever is going on. Because this is where we weave together, right? The net of whatever whatever the new reality or a new timeline or whatever it is that people like to talk about, right? In these sort of energy spaces,
Mm-hmm.
that happens through how we're showing up every day. And
Mm-hmm.
so next year I'll be offering so in 2025, some short 22-day elixir opportunities to really marinate in how it is in a bite-sized way,
Mm-hmm.
how it is that we bring these concepts into our everyday life when things are hard. My husband and I, like I mentioned, we've been married almost 26 years. 8 months after we got married, he was hit by a car. He had a death experience. They cobbled his body back together. 6 surgeries later, I had a child, which was such a blessing, but a very unexpected thing, who was then diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. So then we were up all night. Like, we had this really intense first few years of our marriage. So how do you do it then? Right? Like, that's what I care about
Mm-hmm.
is then it's all well and good to feel all, rainbows and ponies
Yeah, go sit on the
when
mountaintop and
yeah, when I'm on a yoga retreat or I just worked with my, spiritual teacher over the weekend. But what happens when I go home,
Mhm.
right? What happens when I'm really in my own body first thing on a Monday morning when I have a sick kid or I have a partner who has a chronic illness or I have a chronic illness? Like, how do I not bypass those things, but really integrate these learnings with how I think, how I feel, how I believe, how I do, how I show up, what I'm anchoring in my body and being.
Mhm.
And so that to me is where really the rubber meets the road. And it's the most interesting thing to talk about.
It is. I totally agree. I totally agree. To me, it's about how does life work?
Mm.
And thinking about that question, how does life work? That directly
Mm.
translates only when it's what life is showing us and bringing us. And are we still there in alignment with that resonance and living the truth of who we are?
Yes.
Or
Yes.
do we
In
forget?
that full, yes. Yes, in that full coherence so that we can experience that exquisite, and I know you've experienced it, that feeling of flow state, right? Where you're in this state where you're in the present moment and you're taking care of bills or
Mhm.
kids or clients or creation or whatever it is. And you just feel that high voltage moving through you because
Mhm.
there aren't those places of torque, right? Those places of old programs that are
Mhm.
creating limitations and, self-bullying that we can do with our
Mhm.
own thinking. So yeah, so that's what I'll be doing more of in 2025.
Wonderful. Will you tell people how they can best reach out to you, how they can find where they can find you and how they can connect?
Of course. So my website, jennyglick.com. And if you're interested in your pleasure archetype, which is a fun 2-minute quiz to find out what your pleasure archetype is, it's jennyglick.com/quiz. Because when we know how it is that we naturally lean into pleasure,
Mhm.
then it becomes easier to just do more of that, right? And you get a free gift when you complete the quiz. But check me out there. You can follow me on Instagram, and I am at jenny.glick on Instagram, and I post videos and all kinds of things in that space.
Ooh, and all of that will be in the show notes. So if you didn't get that, you just look at the show notes. So, but I also love to have your voice, let us know as well. Jenny,
Thank you.
thank you so much for all that you have shared and your willingness to, follow this conversation wherever it's gone and however it's unfolded. I really appreciate you and your capacity for that.
Thank you so much, Laurie. Thank you for your work in the world and for being such a steward for this podcast that's been around for so long in a world where people start and stop things, that you have really nourished this healthy masculine in the house, right? Really nourished this and held containment for this creative endeavor that you're offering. It's a real service to our planet. So thank you for that.
You are welcome. And I love, everybody that is listening, I want to thank you for being with us today at Wisdom Talk Radio because this is why we do this. It's for you, really. And I will have to say, I do it for me too. That is also the truth. But I want you to know that you can always join us here regularly for more wisdom discovery, and illumination. And find us on your favorite place to listen. But just like Jenny was saying, this is here in service and there's so much we get to share. Leave us a review, because if you've enjoyed listening, that's what calls other people's attention to say, oh, what could I discover here? What could I be inspired by here? So please do that. And for more about you, with how do you thrive with your own personal connection with Source, take the Quantum Connection quiz. And we'll see you next time.
Thanks for joining us here at Wisdom Talk Radio. We wish you well in your conscious explorations. For more information and to join in the conversation, our website is wisdomtalkradio.com or at Wisdom Talk Radio on Facebook.